A warm welcome to you all. Without further delay, we are pleased to introduce your new manager.
Hey my people, how you doing? I hope you're having a damn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be discussing a what-if scenario. What if the likes of Xabi Alonso joins Liverpool in the summer, succeeding the likes of Jurgen Klopp, who recently announced that he would be leaving Liverpool. Now, there have been a whole host of names thrown around, Xabi and so on and so on and so on, but I think personally that it's going to be Xabi Alonso. And of course, I've then gone ahead, tweaked his system, tweaked his style of play to try and fit the likes of Liverpool and who they have and possess in their team. So if you don't mind, please hit that like button down below, subscribe if you are new. I will also be discussing a few potential transfers that Liverpool could try and target in the summer that would go a long way in having this system work out at Liverpool. So moving on to the formation, I've selected a 5-2-2-1 system, and essentially I've just tweaked it ever so slightly, pushing the wing backs slightly up the field, creating them into those wider midfielders. So it is essentially one goalkeeper, 3 centre backs, 2 wider midfielders, 2 central midfielders, 2 attacking midfielders, and then of course 1 striker. Now moving on to the tactics and the tactical side of things, the tactical vision that I would think would best suit a Xabi Alonso system would be wing play. Now of course this naturally will try and stretch the field of play, allowing for a bit more time and space for your midfielders to try and work with and generate, and obviously trying to get them on the ball and helping them create for the offense going forward, but at the same time stretching the play, getting those wider positions, hence the left and the right wide midfielders, into key attacking areas. Now this will be Trent and Robertson. Now a few seasons ago, when Liverpool obviously won the Champions League trophy, the likes of Trent and Robertson had very similar roles, getting wide, getting out into those wide areas, creating and being wide playmakers, allowing for the likes of Salah and Mane to be a bit more central, inverted forwards. So essentially they will be reverting back into that style of play, and I think it would suit what Trent and Robertson can offer for this team going forward. As for the defense and the defensive style, now Xabi Alonso requires his sides to maintain their structural integrity to the formation at hand. So you'll still look to try and do this on the defensive side of things, but when the opposition make a mistake, maybe a bad pass, maybe a heavy touch, as a cohesive unit, the team will move into that area, try and, win the ball back, and then obviously look to try and counter and turn it into an offensive opportunity. Now moving on to the team width, I have set it to 30, allowing for a very compact unit centrally, and also this will force the opposition out wide. And to be honest, anything that the opposition can try and, create from those wider areas, you've got the likes of Alisson and Van Dijk and so on, who can definitely look to try and deal with anything that the opposition can try and create. Now moving on to the depth, I've set it to 80. This is obviously a high line. It helps in and out of possession. Of course, Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp have been accustomed to playing a high line, so I don't think in terms of the transitioning effects for that, there'd be many issues with the squad going forward. As for the offense, the build-up play I've gone with is a balanced approach. Now this will help maintain the structural integrity of the formation at hand and still allow and incorporate the other aspects that you would require for a Xabi Alonso type system. The ability to potentially play those long balls in behind. Of course, you've got the likes of Virgil van Dijk in the team, who is very accustomed to being able to spray a ball over the top of the opposition's back line, allowing for your forwards to try and make those penetrating runs in behind to try and exploit. At the same time, you are going to be playing a possession-based brand of football, meaning you would still require the slow build-up play. You would still require your centre-backs as well as your central midfielders, and maybe even your wider midfielders to try and show for the ball and try and pop up in those little key areas to try and, help and assist with the possession-based build-up play. As for the width, I've set it to 80. Of course, this will help get the likes of Trent and Robertson into those wider channels, as well as it will also allow for a bit more support in those wider areas of the field, allowing for the likes of Szoboszlai or Diaz or whoever you have on the field in those number 10 areas to try and drift into those wide areas and try and pull opposition players out of position. This in turn will allow for a bit more space for the likes of a Darwin Núñez as well as your 2 central midfielders to have a bit more space and time in and around them. As for the players in the box, I've set it to 8. This will allow for a lot of players being able to get into the box, making those forward runs, encouraging them to have a bit more of an attacking outlet to their game. At the same time, it will generate a few more targets for the likes of Robertson or potentially Trent to try and hit in and around the opposition's box. As for the corners and the free kicks, as per always, I have set it to 4. So taking a look at some of the instructions, starting off at the back with Alisson. So he's set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper, of course. With a high line, you would require him to make those runs outside of the box, as well as claiming the ball, being very proactive and reactive to what the opposition are trying to throw at this Liverpool defense. As for the come for crosses and saving on crosses, you would expect him to be able to claim those aerial balls, still be very aggressive, and probably the best goalkeeper in the world currently. So essentially the role wouldn't actually change too much between the Xabi Alonso system and the current Jurgen Klopp system. As for your backline, we've got the likes of Gomez, Van Dijk, and Konate. Now, as for Van Dijk and Gomez, they've got the same roles. Both of them are set to conservative interceptions. You need them to try and maintain the structural integrity of that backline at times. Whereas the likes of Konate, taking on a bit more of the Kasonu / Tapsoba type role, where you would expect him to, when in possession of the ball, drift into those wider right-hand channels, offering his support, offering that extra passing option, as well as the ability to step up and be a bit more aggressive and imposing towards the opposition players. Of course, with Konate in this role, it does free up a bit more of the defensive duties that Trent would have, which in turn helps out this Liverpool side. Moving on to Trent now, of course, he's got a slightly differing role to what Robertson does have, but essentially they are very similar. So, for Trent, you would expect him to come back on defense, still having the ability and the duties every now and then to come back and help out on the defensive side of things. But in terms of the chance creation, I've told him to have that free roam role. Now, essentially, you don't really want to just get rid of the idea that Trent can invert into the midfield. So the free roam approach does allow him to drift centrally in certain moments, allow him to link up a bit more with the likes of McAllister and Szoboszlai and anybody that you've put in that midfield area. So you still want him to have that role, but most importantly, as a potential wing-back / wide midfielder, you want him to be able to make those runs into those wider channels, trying to exploit and penetrate the opposition's back line. So getting behind is going to be essential, as well as the normal interceptions and of course, the support on crosses. I've set it to a balanced approach. So yes, breaking into the box every now and then, but at the same time, looking to hang in and around the edge of the area and trying to create for others. Now moving on to the likes of Robertson, of course, I've told him to come back on defense, and to be fair, he is the better defender and the fullback in terms of the defensive side of things out of the two. So you would want him to come back, help out on the defensive side of things, of course, stay wide and getting behind. A natural fullback type role or wingback type role that I've given him, hugging the touchline, generating a lot of pace and space down that left-hand flank, which is essentially what you want Robertson to try and do. As for the interceptions, I've set it to aggressive, more or less trying to replicate his temperaments in games, as well as, just like with Trent, the support on crosses I've set to balanced. More centrally now into the likes of Gravenberch, he's going to be a bit more of a box-to-box type player, allowing himself to drop a bit deeper, show support for the build-up play from the back, but at the same time, allowing himself to roam forward and be a bit more involved in the offensive outlets. As for the support on crosses, both your central midfielders will have this role. Stay on the edge of the box, looking to try and rotate the ball into those wider areas, trying to, facilitate the pace of play a bit more. As for the interceptions, I've set it to normal. You more or less want to make sure that your central midfielders are structurally sound, not stepping out too much, not being too aggressive with the chase down interception attempts, and making sure that structurally they are very integral to the defensive outlets of the side. As for the defensive positioning, I've set them to cover the wing. So if your fullbacks are out of position or your wider midfielders are out of position, you'll have at least one or two cover men that can definitely look to try and pick up those runners and prevent those crosses. As for the positioning freedom, both of your central midfielders will be instructed to stick to position. So moving on to the likes of McAllister, he has basically got the same role as Gravenberch. As you can see, cover the wing, stick to position, stay on the edge of the box, and of course normal interceptions, except for the fact that you would want him and require him to stay back while attacking. Of course, this season under Klopp, he's mainly played as an out-and-out number 6, which to me personally, I don't think he suits that position, but he has shown that he can do a very effective job with it. So therefore, in a Xabi Alonso type system where you would require one of the central midfielders to potentially drop in certain moments, show for the ball, collect the ball off of the goalkeeper or the backline, and I think that McAllister can fulfill this role quite effectively. Into the number 10 position, now of course Szoboszlai and Jota, I've selected them, but it can be a Diaz, it can be the likes of a Gakpo as well. Not a Salah though, but we will talk about that later. But as for the likes of Szoboszlai, he's going to be the slightly more attacking of the two number 10s. Now, essentially I've modelled Szoboszlai's role off of the likes of Florian Wirtz and what Xabi Alonso has been able to do with him. So, for this role going forward, you'd want him to come back on defense, obviously dropping a bit deeper, collecting the ball a bit at a deeper rate, getting on the ball and charging at the opposition, looking to try and link up play as best as he possibly can. As for the support on crosses, now I've told him and instructed him to get into the box, be very attacking, trying to land on the end of those crosses or cutbacks, or even just making those runs into the box and trying to create for anybody in and around with him. As for the positioning freedom, I've set it to free roam. Now, essentially, you want him to be able to pop up in the little half spaces, pull opposition players out of position, open up space for Trent or the likes of Gravenberch or Jota, or, anybody in and around him, you want him to try and generate space for. As for the likes of the interceptions, I've set it to aggressive, obviously looking to try and, hurry the opposition, force them into those mistakes, and then as a cohesive unit, try and turn those mistakes into scoring opportunities. Now moving on to the likes of Jota, he's got a very similar role but slightly not as attacking, so he's set to come back on defense just like with Szoboszlai, helping out on the defensive side of things, allowing him to have a deeper starting position, get on the ball a bit earlier, and obviously look to also drive at the opposition with it. But also, for the support on crosses, I've set it to a balanced approach, so he can hang in and around the box and also make those deeper runs into it as well. For the positioning freedom, just like with Szoboszlai, putting players out of position, popping up in those little half spaces, allowing for him to show for the ball, supports the possession-based style of football a little bit more. As for the interceptions, just like with Szoboszlai as well, I've set it to aggressive. And then finally, moving on to the likes of Darwin Núñez. Now, a slightly altered striker role compared to what Xabi Alonso currently uses, but I think that this role will best suit the likes of Núñez in the system going forward. So, for the support runs, allowing him to have a balance would best suit him, allowing him to drift into those wider channels, chase down those potential balls whipped in over the top, but at the same time, still allowing him to have a bit more of a central, integral role to the offensive system. As for the attacking runs, now, essentially a target man would suit this side a lot more, but naturally Darwin Núñez isn't essentially just an out-and-out target man. He can make those runs in behind. You also want to try and use that pace that he does have, so that's why I've gone with a very mixed approach. So he can play as a false nine, dropping off the back line, getting on the ball a bit more, linking up play a bit more effectively, or potentially he can have that strong out-and-out target man where he looks to try and back into the opposition, link up play a bit more with the number 10s in and around him. And then also he can look to make those breaking runs in behind, looking to try and use his pace to his advantage and trying to exploit the opposition with. As for the interceptions, just like with your other, or your two players that are just in behind him, I was going to say other forwards, which essentially is what they are in some moments. But just like with them, you want it to be aggressive, implementing that frontline press, forcing the opposition into heavy mistakes. As you'll also see here, for the defensive support, I've told him to stay forward, so not exactly dropping off. He will be the out-and-out focus point for the counter-attacks. So guys, I'm just going to rattle through a few transfers that you could look to try and make that would help suit this Xabi Alonso system. Starting off with the centre-back area. Now, I think they are quite short in that area, so I've gone with a few, and most certainly, you'll see here that they are left-footed players. Of course, the likes of Gomez, Van Dijk, as well as Konate are all right-footed players, so you need a bit more balance, and we've seen with Xabi Alonso, he does prefer a balanced back line. So essentially, Hincapié, currently playing for the man himself, would come in, and I think he would be the best suited player to the system, of course, currently using it and playing in it in the current Bayer Leverkusen team. So he could be an instant impact type signing. Another really good signing that would come in and do really well, and of course Liverpool have established that they do have a relationship with the likes of Stuttgart, would be this man right here, Aito. Of course, can play as a left back or a centre back. He is left footed, does have some really good play styles. So again, I think he could be a really, really good option. Another few here are Lukeba, Schlotterbeck, and Zagadou, who are all left-footed. Of course, Zagadou is slightly slower, so I don't know if he would be a good option for a high line, but he could be a good rotational piece. One man that I think if Liverpool sign, it would kill the absolute league, would be this man right here, Nico Schlotterbeck. Of course, one of my favourite players on this list. It would kill me to see him go to Liverpool, but again, I think it would be a very, very good move. He's got some really good play styles, power header, long ball, jockey, slide tackle, intercept, block, and aerial. I felt like I was rapping there, but point is, he would suit the system so well. I think him and Hincapié would probably and should probably be the top two targets for Liverpool in the summer, especially if they are going to shift to a back three system. And then we've got the likes of Per Schurz as well as Malik Thiaw. They were just linked with moves to Liverpool in the past, which is why essentially I've put them on this list. As for your midfield area, of course, we've got the likes of Thiago and maybe a few others that might be out the door. So I've put a few players on the list that I think could come in and make a very good impact on this side. Of course, Varela, recently getting a move to Porto, so won't actually be available in the first season, but I do think that he could be a very good player for Liverpool, nonetheless. Benetzer, Hidaria, Cockatoo, as well as Koopmeiners also could be very good players for a two-man midfield. They all have that high energy or high octane type approach to football, and again, they could work very, very well in a midfield 2 system. Moving on slightly further into your forward line / number 10 roles. Now we've got the likes of Karim Adeyemi, Xavi Simons, as well as Florian Wirtz. Now, The reason I put these 3 potential superstars on the list, and I would convert them all into central attacking midfielders, so that goes for the likes of Kareem Adeyemi as well. I think the likes of Mohamed Salah will be leaving. I think him and Klopp will both exit this summer, so therefore they will be looking to replace the likes of Mohamed Salah, and what better way to do so than signing the current superstar of Bayer Leverkusen. Get their manager, get their superstar, bring them in, and they should technically work on paper, and they should technically work on the field together quite well. So maybe £100 million move for the likes of Florian Wirtz isn't so far-fetched, and I think it could work out very, very well. So now moving on to the striker area. So essentially, Liverpool currently have Darwin Núñez. Of course, they have the likes of Cody Gakpo as well, but I think Gakpo is more suited to the number 10 role. And Darwin Núñez is the only out-and-out striker. So I've put down a few names here, the likes of Yusuf Makoko, Schick, Cabral, Castellanos, as well as Xerxes, as a few options that could look to come in and either be rotational pieces or bench options for this Liverpool side. I also think that they would suit this Xabi Alonso system very, very well. And there you have it, guys. That is how I would implement Xabi Alonso's system into the current Liverpool side. Of course, a few transfers to go with it. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.